Welcome everyone. I'm super excited to talk to you today about open source and cloud technologies, and I'm even more excited to introduce you the speakers. So Rajesh, today we'll be talking to Rajesh Ajmera, Head of Engineering at Traveloka, and Nitish Jha from Head of Engineering at Gojek. Rajesh has more than 20 years experience in engineering, and he's been working for both Fortune 500 and startups. Currently, he's focusing on building next generation platforms and solutions, and his team is responsible for Traveloka's mobile and web applications. Rajesh takes pride in building self-sufficient teams and enabling them to build amazing products for their customers. In his free time, he's enjoying traveling, experiencing new technologies and cultures. Nitish is the head of engineering at Gojek, and he's responsible for the transport business lines and also heads the platform for identity and communication. Nitish teams at Gojek build products and solutions for millions of customers, drivers, and merchants all across Asia, and their aim is to eliminate friction from their daily lives. He's currently focused on taking Gojek through the next generation of growth and tech evolution. An eternal optimist, Nitish has 17 years of experience, and he's a real startup guy. In his free time, he likes to watch football and he loves to travel and read. Thank you so much, Rajesh and Nitish, for joining us today. I'm super excited to be here with both of you. I'm Andrea Mandial. I'm the head of field marketing here at Avon, and I'll be your host today. Rajesh and Nitish, are you ready?
Yeah, sure. I think I can give it a shot. So in general, see, if we look at last 1 year versus last 10 years, right? It's a major difference which we can actually talk about. So if I talk about last 1 year, you will really feel that in last 1 year, because of COVID pandemic, a lot of things have changed in the industry, and internet has become mainstream. I mean, people who were not having smartphones, they are nowadays having smartphones, and they have to actually live with those phones, because if you are not doing anything, then you have your own one friend, which is smartphone as of now. If I talk about last 10 years, then a lot of things were actually manual before 10 years, and those have started digitizing over time. When the digitization has started, a lot of things have changed over time. Like, say, if I talk about 10 years back, people used to go with on-premise solutions for the cloud or the internet-based systems, whereas now people are going for, or companies are going for, cloud-based systems. So it's a major dramatic shift which happened, which has given very good scale, a lot of bandwidth for functional development and so on. So a lot of things have changed in the industry, and at the same time, user base has also evolved over time. That things are pretty much changing all the way.
Yeah. Yep. Completely agree with you, right? And see, anyways, the open source and cloud technologies were very much the catalyst for continuous innovation, right? I think the pandemic, at least one of the good things that has come out of it, it has just expedited our journey towards it, right? And again, no matter what list we come up with, I'm sure we'll miss out on some very important ones, right? But if I have to create a top three kind of a list here, I would say, at least in the tech world, right? I would say focus on edge computing, multi or hybrid cloud, and the other one I would put in the list would be tech on demand. All right. Edge computing, for example, I'm a firm believer that we will see new business models emerge that facilitate the deployment of edge. Technologies like AI and 5G will only facilitate the expansion of edge use cases, right? Now, one thing that goes against the current cloud computing is that it's handled by a limited number of providers who dominate the space. And now these large centralized data processing centers tie your computing and storage ability to multiple factors like proximity, bandwidth, resources provided, right? And with the ever-growing investment in IoT, issues of latency, bandwidth, security are pretty much inevitable, right? And intelligent technologies like AI and robotics, on top of this, require greater speed and processing power, right? And edge computing, to me, is the answer to solve all these. The other trend that I've seen speed up during this time is multi and hybrid clouds, or rather the adoption of these, right? Businesses recognize that cloud data management isn't about one specific platform or infrastructure anymore. It's about choosing the solution that's right for the job at hand. Right. So the trend I see, and it's only gathering pace, is enterprises are becoming less worried about sticking with a single provider or a vendor, right? And they are embracing these multi-cloud or hybrid solutions to get the best out of it, right? So if you ask me, I wouldn't be surprised if, let's say, over the next year or two, 80 to 90% of the enterprises would have some kind of a mixed bag solution in their offering, right? The third one, again, this is a tricky one, but I would say is tech on demand, right? Again, some of it is pretty much key to what cloud providers have brought into their offerings, but the trend that I see right now is there is an increased focus on controlling cloud costs, right? As this gains traction, a logical outcome would be that businesses will have more dollars at their disposal, which they can then leverage to take advantage of solutions that give them very industry-specific offerings, right? Providers too, right? The cloud providers will look to push out innovation that is easily accessible to a wider audience, right? It's like democratizing technology for everyone. So it becomes a win-win for everybody involved, right? And the other thing that I'm very cognizant about is the big organizations that back some of these cloud providers still now have only brought in the tech and systems offerings to the table, right? But they also have a similar capability available in the operational world. So honestly, again, this is a little bit of a left field, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if any of them bring in, let's say, a ready-made offering in the world of logistics, let's say. All right. Yeah, I'm sure I'm leaving out, let's say, trends in AI or serverless architecture, but if you have to ask me to create a short list of top 3, this is what I would go with.
That's very interesting. It sounds like there are many opportunities that companies can take advantage of, but I think with many opportunities, sometimes you also run into certain challenges. So when you have so many options, you can do so many things. Can we look into what are the challenges at the moment, and maybe we can both look at your specific industry and see if there's like something different from the other. Nitish, if you want, you can start this one.
Sure. Well, the challenges are multiple, whether it's about security, whether it's about data, but primarily all of this centered around the consumer, right? We have to be cognizant that we are dealing with an extremely smart and focused consumer who has choices and at the same time loves a good deal, right? So loyalty towards a product is a very hard battle, right? These consumers are also security aware, and for the most part, I would say extremely paranoid about how their data is collected and used, right? But again, that's the tricky part, right? But at the same time, they want personalized offerings, right? Throwing a list of items and letting users fish through doesn't cut it anymore, right? ML and AI, of course, are the big bets for the right reasons. And the other thing that we have seen stick with the user is creating an immersive experience, if you may, right? They love products that eliminate friction in their lives. They want things to be organic to how they go about their day, right? They don't want to change their habits, but they want products to be built around them, right? Home automation, chatbots, right? This is where we are headed, and products have to figure out how they become part of the user's life, right? So it's a balancing act across the board, I would say, whether it's security, whether it's what you offer to the customer, and more importantly, how you offer it to the customer.
That's very interesting. I'm wondering if it's very different for Rajesh, like you mentioned, data, security, loyalty. Is there anything, do you have the same challenges, or are there any additional ones that you might want to add?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Nitish spoke about. But at the same time, if you look at the bigger, wider, horizon, We also see how companies are going towards these challenges and how they are solving these challenges. So that is where I see the cloud and edge computing, as Nitish spoke about earlier, plays a very critical role, because that, now today, in today's scenario, data is the key, which can actually give a lot of insight, and we have a way to find out what user likes or what user dislikes, and using that data in the efficient fashion, finding out the insights in it, that itself needs a lot of understanding of the technologies and the solutions. So that actually helps a lot if we have done it well, and figuring and making our product go to next level. So those kind of challenges are also there alongside those. And if I go into completely different side, then it comes to, some companies have actually gone to the cloud already, who have started on cloud probably, and some companies decided to go from on premise to cloud. So that actually gives another horizon, where people or companies have to figure out that how to go from on premise to cloud, and that might need certain kind of architectural changes in the softwares itself. So that these kind of challenges are available in the market, and there are many solutions also available which can be utilized for such kind of challenges.
I think we're going to talk about migration to cloud a bit later on. So I think let's go to a different side of the story. So I think Nitish, you mentioned that we're in the era when we make technology like a democratic sort of thing, right? And I think open source plays a certain role in it. I know it's a sensitive question. We briefly talked about it earlier, but if you had to talk a little bit about it, what do you think? I think there's like many business models still that aim to lock in their users and so on. That's kind of against what open source is supposed to be. But again, if it's too sensitive, it's okay. But I would like to hear a little bit of what you think. Do you want to start, Nitish?
Sure. Yeah, of course, right. And in a way, that is the truth we have to deal with in today's world, right? Traditionally, as we've been discussing earlier, the protection of intellectual property has always been regarded as the precondition to value capture, right? But with the advent of open source, all of that changed, right? Though there were skeptics to start with, the open source movement has proven its benefits beyond any doubt. And yes, I know I'll be biased to one side of the house, but yeah, that's where I would say the world is moving. Now, though, as you rightly pointed out, we are seeing an increasing tension between the open source projects and the companies that are building services on top of the open source, right? The cloud vendors, for example, right? Now, licenses that were applied to open source projects a decade ago, for example, never contemplated the possibility of a cloud vendor delivering a SaaS service, right? Using a project and without even contributing back to it, right? And which is leaving the open source world in a very challenging position, right? In a way, if you look at it, it's shaping up to be a relationship which is heavily skewed, where some parties which are involved, may only be looking at open source as a force multiplier for their engineering, right? And the other critical part to it, at the core of all this tension, is the human aspect, right? The maintainers of the open source code base, right? Open source movement has always been focused on code, right? Now, as the result of this, sadly, is a system that kind of, I would say, or rather, for lack of better word, I would say neglects the people behind it, right? We have seen enough episodes where maintainers themselves find themselves in a curious place. Some have gone public about financial help. Some have expressed regret about the usage of code about quote unquote unethical purposes. But yeah, it's all not all doomsday. Open source is truly thriving and is probably the powerhouse behind a lot of the core technology that we see in our worlds today. While we continue to work together to maintain our global open source community, we have to recognize that some companies may have to reevaluate their business models, right, around how they utilize open source software. There is work to be done, but to me, again, blame me for being optimistic. To me, the future looks promising.
Well, you did define yourself as an eternal optimist. So to be honest, your position doesn't surprise me. That's very interesting, Rajesh. Do you agree with Nitish, or is your opinion somehow different?
I think I agree with Nitish. I mean, open source is the driver for today's technologies in most of the cases. The only challenge or caution I would like to talk about is the licensing of the open sources. That what kind of licensing we are going with, and what can be the impact on the product when the product starts going. So essentially, when the open source is being decided or being used in the certain product, we have to be very cautious that what we are using and why we are using and how far we can go with this. At the same time, the maturity level of the open source solution also matters a lot, because sometimes a lot of smaller size open source solutions are also available. So maturity of the open source actually can define how much scalable or reliable this can be. So that's another thing. That's where again I see that most of the cloud technologies, when we go towards many open source big size solutions are already existing in the cloud technologies. So it makes our life a little easier, because when we go to cloud, we have well tested solutions available. So open source actually, yes, kind of helps us out in a much better.
Okay. I think the next question is a bit closer to even to the title of our event. So how can cloud and open source technology support companies? And we don't necessarily have to think of COVID. It's just in general. I was wondering, what role do these technologies have in your businesses? So Rajesh, if you want, you can actually continue with this question, and then we'll hear out Nitish.
So frankly speaking, if I talk about last 8 or 9 years, I have not seen anything outside cloud. I mean, we are in cloud. Whether it's a private cloud or it's a public cloud, that's a different story, but it's always a cloud. And when we go into the cloud, most of the open sources are pre-installed in the cloud. So, that actually gives the, best benefit that the which you're going to spend in installing the softwares or making them compatible and various other things, those are actually sorted out and those are well tested solutions. So actually, open source is the key in the cloud environments, along with the services which are provided by the cloud providers directly. And we can get the ample amount of benefit from the time to market perspective, that when do we want to go to the market, because now a company needs to only work on the functional viability or functional. Rest of the non-functional solutions are mostly available once integrate and go ahead, right? So reliability, scalability, all becomes a hunky dory in such cases. So I kind of find that cloud and open source hand in hand, and we have a lot of benefits coming out of this marriage between cloud and open source.
Yep, completely agree with Rajeshwan. And I think both of us have our balls in the same court, right? Again, top product companies, as Rajesh rightly pointed out, this is the new age, right? All of them leverage and use these technologies to solve real world problems. And these have obvious benefits for the companies as well, right? And in fact, the fact that the tech world was able to rebound like it did during the pandemic was made possible in a big way by the investments the companies had made in cloud services, right? And these cloud services themselves are heavily reliant on open source technology, right? So to me, these technologies are now part of the DNA in most tech companies, right? These are the true enablers for companies to be able to focus on their business, as Rajesh rightly pointed out, so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel over and over, right? But at the same time, as we touched upon in the previous question, it has to be a two-way street, right? Especially for open source, it's also important that companies support the open source world as well. It's important that we keep a good balance between the consumers of these technologies and the ecosystem behind it, right? And all the signs are very positive, right? I'm particularly excited, for example, with projects like GitHub Sponsors or Community Bridge from Linux Foundation, where a lot of effort is being made to sponsor the open source community as well, right? So what matters now is how we, the software community, can use these type of platforms in delivering funding to our open source projects and individuals who support the work, right? And these open source communities can create work that is even or create products which are even more powerful for this world.
Yeah, no, I think that makes complete sense. Now that we talked about cloud and all that, I'm pretty sure that some people might ask you what kind of prerequisites you have to go for when adopting cloud technologies. Maybe Rajesh, do you wanna take a go?
Well, it's a vast topic which we can talk about, that what all will be required. Basically, it starts from the kind of consumer base we are looking at or dealing with, at the same time the kind of business or domain we are dealing with. So essentially, if I go very normal and very generic requirements of what should be actually right for success, and actually the point comes in how adaptable we are for cloud computing. We are going towards it, right? Our architectures may need an enhancement. We have to look at the security aspects of various things, and of course it depends upon your domain. Say for example, if you are in financial domain, security plays a very critical role, whereas in utility domain it may not be that critical, but still cloud being a cloud, it's more sensitive or prone to get affected. So in such cases it's better to be prepared for those things. So analysis from the security perspective, how we are going to integrate with cloud native technologies. For example, say when we go to the cloud, in some cases we get some services which can actually uh, if I put in different words, we don't need to go for bare metal, right? We can look at no server or serverless computing as well. So in such cases, how are we going to adopt those technologies in our architecture, or does that need a change in the architecture, or what's going to happen, right? Those kind of changes may be required, and we should be ready. We should have right skill set available for those kind of things. The scalability comes as a benefit or as a bonus with cloud, that if we have a auto scaling and various things enabled in the cloud and used properly, then scalability becomes easy. Though still our code base, our technologies have to be tested well for those kind of things. If we talk about another level, then the cost also plays a very critical role, because what kind of business we are dealing with, and how much profitability we are looking at versus what kind of cost can come up from the cloud. That all has to be balanced, and it can be a win-win, or a trade-off which we have to look at while going towards the cloud. So a lot of such aspects, if we look at, we actually can define which cloud is good, and what all to be done around those areas. And when we go to the cloud, then say some things which may be a limitation when we do our on premises or so. In such cases, in cloud we get a lot of other technologies which can actually enhance the business further, right? And the data can be used in the biggest way, like the way Nitesh was explaining earlier, that AI functions, those are all dependent upon data, and cloud has ample amount of computing power available, so we can utilize the data in the efficient manner, and we can get a lot of insight from it. So it's like a lot of advantages, and at the same time we need to have a trade-off also, that what will work, what will not work, or how far we want to go with the certain capability.
True. Yeah, makes sense, right? And till date, if you look at it, organizations have been taking a variety of approaches towards cloud adoption, right? But broadly speaking, these can be categorized into two buckets, if you may, right? As Rajesh pointed out, to get the true benefits of cloud, some of them are actually replacing and rebuilding legacy applications from scratch, right? To take full advantages of what cloud has to offer. But there's only like a 15 to 20% bucket, right? In the other category, which is probably more prevalent, is what we refer to as the lift and shift model. Right? Companies pick up the existing applications as is, or maybe with very limited changes, right? Which can restrict the transformation value of the migration that Rajesh was pointing out, but it gets the organization started, right? At the very least, in the short term, that this gives the organization mature systems that have been very finely tuned, right? But it preserves most of your technical debt, right? Which is probably the largest off-balance sheet liability any organization would have, right? So yeah, in terms of prerequisites or preparedness, I would say it's as much a cultural change as it's a technological change, right? So in terms of preparedness, I would say cultural readiness, outline the roles, responsibilities, expectations from the team. Appreciate that this is going to be a journey, especially for the second group of organizations who start with a backlog from the on-premise world. And it's not gonna be a landing spot. Understand that the operating model challenges they have to overcome to take advantage of the cloud. The next would be business readiness. The cloud strategy needs to be defined and prioritized as a high-level migration, almost like a backlog, right? For the digital estate that the company is looking to migrate. Of course, the tech readiness, right? Assessment, planning, identifying the right cloud products, that goes hand in hand. And as Rajesh rightly pointed out, most companies have to rethink their governance and security, right? Cloud migration can often disrupt an organization's governance strategy, right? As organizations move data to the public cloud, especially, more responsibility falls on the shoulders of the cloud service providers, right? Therefore, the organizations must shape their governance strategies accordingly as well. Security concerns are probably a common deterrent for any organization considering cloud migration, right? So it's important to plan ahead for any potential breaches, failover, or even disaster recovery, for example.
Nitish, now that you went into security, that was going to be my next question. So maybe you can go a little bit more in depth on this aspect, and then Rajesh can also comment on it. What do you think?
Sure. And this one's going to be tricky, right? You're only going to be as secure till you discover your next loophole. But yeah, preparedness is the key. And there are multiple aspects, right? First and foremost that I can think of is protect the data. Encryption of data must be end-to-end. Now, one of the common patterns I've seen is companies at times tend to restrict their efforts, right? For example, the data in transit may be protected, assuming that's going to be outside the boundaries, but the data at rest may not be, right? Another example, the data may be encrypted, but probably the keys are not as well protected, right? Leaving data, especially PII in today's world, is a huge risk in cloud, right? We have had enough information, enough episodes where things like voter information, bank records, sensitive government files, you name it, right? Episodes where these have been exposed to attacks as well, right? Now, storing sensitive data in cloud without putting in place appropriate controls to prevent access to a server is not just dangerous, but to me, it's irresponsible as well, right? So watch out for your keys, protect them diligently. Even if you look at the login breach reports, right, it's not uncommon for access keys to be exposed, right? And the most or the least suspecting of sources, right? These could be exposed via public websites, source codes repositories, you name it, right? The next one I would say is applying user level data security, control who has access, how they access, right? Most cloud service providers give you role-based access control, right? Which would allow customers to set user-specific access and editing permissions for the data, right? Watch out for backdoors, endpoints, ports which are not in use, right? Generally speaking, only load balancers or bastion hosts should be exposed to the internet, right? But at times you run into episodes where an administrator by mistake leaves connections wide open, right? Giving every machine the ability to connect, right? The next one, I would say, know what you're responsible for, right? As we touched upon in the previous topic, all cloud services aren't the same, right? And the level of responsibilities varies. Some managed service may be controlled completely by the provider in terms of data transmission and storage, while some services, even from the same provider at times, right, may be left to the customer to configure and set up data protection, right? While all that the provider maintains is the OS, right? Improve visibility. All major cloud providers offer some level of logging tools, right? So make sure to turn on security logging, monitoring, see unauthorized access attempts and other issues. What else? Have a defined and enforced data deletion policy, right? Most of us lose sight of data that we don't need, right? So that's critical. And the other thing I can think of is adopting a shift left approach to anything security, right? Incorporate security considerations early into the development process versus adding security while in the later stages of development, right? Not only should enterprises monitor what they have in the platforms, they should also be checking all the code that's going into the platform before it goes live, right? Along similar lines, vulnerability testing, right, should be rigorous and ongoing. Don't wait for something to happen and react to it. And if something happens, don't restrict yourself to just that particular problem, right? Because more often than not, these incidents also help uncover a pattern that the organization may not be covered on. What do you think, Rajesh?
I think you have covered most of the points. I would just like to add a few more things that, in general, we say now in today's scenario, if the size of the organization is big enough, I mean, it depends upon what kind of security we want to implement at what stage of the company. Because, in general, if the company is in very initial stage, security may not be the key thing to, solve that point in time. Maybe functional solutions are more critical. When we go mid-size, probably security will start prevailing and so on. So in general, we say that, let's build the security in the DNA of the company. So when you are hiring developers, when you have engineering teams building up, if you have security built in their DNA, then automatically most of the things will fall in place, and you may not need a lot of, external support in such cases. Because when you're designing, when you're architecting things, you will take care of security automatically, because it's like, bread and, the DNA of the company. So that gives a good amount of benefit, but at the same time, audits are definitely required. There are certain standards available for data privacy, like, GDPR or PDPA for Singapore. So all those things have to be taken care or taken in consideration very carefully when the companies are growing. And then, plan accordingly, because when we go country to country and we launch products in various countries, the security standards or, privacy standards keep changing. When the standards change, we have to be careful about it, and we have to know that what can be done and what cannot be done. Otherwise, we immediately become non-compliant. So that's one thing. Second thing is, in each and every country, if we see the kind of security threat we observe, that has a very, different flavor. In some countries, banking sites are even, having multiple layers of security, whereas in other countries, it may be a little liberal. So those kind of standards also are very important to be aware of in advance when we go to, certain geographies, that what may come our way and how to solve those problems, because it can affect the organization in any way. So yes, it has to be taken care very carefully. At the same time, if I go into cloud solutions, right? So there are ample amount of solutions available in the cloud itself. If I take an example of historical way of doing things and new way of doing things, like say talk about HSM, high security modules, then those were the very very expensive solutions available, which companies have to buy, put on premise, and so on. But nowadays, to protect the data with the secure keys and all, HSMs are easily available in the cloud, and those are shared HSMs. So the overall cost has gone down for those things, and easily those can be utilized because there is a layer available, APIs are available, so we can use those APIs and we can quickly solve the problem. So many benefits available. At the same time, because cloud is public, if it's a public cloud, then it's a vulnerable solution. So we have to be always cautious, and we have to plan all the security aspects the way Nitish was sharing earlier.
Yeah.
I didn't expect you guys to be so diligent with this question. Now we're kind of running out of time. But anyways, let's continue, Rajesh. I'd like you to get a go at for this question, because I think you mentioned it in the challenges. Did you actually have the chance to migrate from on-premise to cloud, the company you're currently working, or have you done it in the past? Did you learn anything that you would like people to be aware of? Yeah.
I think I have gone through multiple times in the past, and it's a very, like the way Nitish was sharing earlier, that's a culture change we speak about. That, culture will be changing, and the skill set is also changing to an extent when you go to cloud. So there are certain stages of moving to the cloud that sometimes, you might use the cloud native in the beginning itself. Sometimes you just move to the cloud, the way Nitish spoke about lift and shift, but lift and shift is not the way we speak. I mean, it's like, we are talking very vanilla term, but it's like, it's more complex than this. Lift and shift doesn't work out, but, essentially, with minimal changes, if you can go to cloud, that can be the, and then you start using cloud in the extensive fashion. So and then after that you can have multiple features which can actually depend upon the cloud, because when you start using cloud, you have various technologies available from AI perspective, from data perspective, and so on. So those technologies can be utilized, and a lot of data analysis can be done. So essentially, when we go step by step, there are possibility of architectural changes, because when you're on premise, that architecture may work out in a certain way, but when you go cloud, you may have some flexibilities or you may have some limitations. So to handle those things, you have to take care of those things. Architecture changes, uh, security standards keep changing, because on-premise is my own, cloud. Whereas when we go to the cloud, the security standards have to change, and we have to make sure that we are quite secure enough, because there are multiple solutions deployed in the cloud, and the vulnerability increases when we go to the cloud. So those kind of changes will also take place. Then the culture or mindset of the developer base will change in the organization. At the same time, the overall technologies may change, because the way you deploy, the way you deal with the situation, the kind of scalability you can go for, the kind of reliability you can go for, those all will have changes, because in on-premise you may not have auto scale, but when you go cloud, you may have auto scale enabled or auto scale available. So those kind of changes. So many such transformations will take place in the organization when we do this. And org structure plays a very critical role when we are making these changes. First thing or foremost thing I would say is, first thing, org structure, that it has to align with the cloud thought process or strategy, and then things will fall in place and things will go fine.
So Rajesh, I think you sort of answered the next question as well, to be honest. So maybe Nitish, what do you think about it?
Oh boy, yeah. Well, this is like a long list of wish list, right? But yeah, first and foremost, as we've been touching upon in the previous question, right? We have to be open to the fact that you may not have a ready-made solution to your business needs from a single provider, right? That is the journey in today's world, right? So be open to discuss your needs with potential cloud providers, because in most cases they themselves are looking to identify areas to invest in, right? So yeah, first one I would say fitment to use, except that there's not gonna be one solution fits all option. So do your due diligence homework and identify what works best in your use case. Maturity of the technology available, right? As Rajesh was pointing out in his previous note, there are a lot of advantages that you can uncover when you go to a cloud, right? And maturity of the technology behind it just gives you that additional leverage into your product or business, right? Very important, data center location, right? Not only would it have an impact on the user experience, there could be implications from, let's say, compliance guidelines or even government regulations, right? So that's critical to understand. We touched upon security tools and best practices along those lines. So that's important. Again, along similar lines, understanding responsibilities, because now it's not just you as an organization who owns everything from nuts and bolts. You also depend on a partner. So understand responsibilities on who's responsible for what. Roadmap of the cloud provider to improve and adapt, willingness to invest. That's important, because you want to improve on your solutions when you go to a cloud, right? Then flexibility to work in a hybrid world, right? A key question in my mind at times is, would I get bogged down to a specific vendor, right? That's kind of a red flag at times if you run into those, right? And of course, if you ask any guy who controls a budget, finance will be a prime factor, right? The cost aspects, right? It's not just financial cost, by the way, even the people cost, right? What kind of skill sets would you need? Do you have those available in your location or not? So yeah, these would be the top items that I would look for.
Okay, now we have I still have 3 questions. I don't think we're going to make it. Maybe I can just split these questions for, like this one maybe can be taken by Rajesh, and then Nitish should take the next one. So if you can, like, I know you mentioned data is a challenge. Yeah, maybe we can refer to big data, the amount of it, I know, structured, unstructured, privacy. Like, what's the biggest challenge when you think of data? Is it privacy? What do you think in your specific business, Rajesh?
I would say one side we can say data is a challenge, and other side we can say data is a friend. It's like, depends like how do we want to use data. So essentially nowadays businesses are completely dependent upon data. If the not available, we have a hard time identifying that what is working, what is not working in the market, what is being liked by the users and what is being not liked by the users. So data essentially is very much a requirement which has to be available. And data management in the cloud is a little easier solution, because see, if I take a very simple challenge here, that in general data size, how much it can go at what point in time, it may be difficult to identify. Whereas when we have a cloud solutions available, then we need not really worry about how much data can be collected. I mean, expanding on data over time, and cloud gives you the benefit of auto scaling. Storage can keep expanding. Of course, cost is one of the challenge in such cases, that when you have too much of data, then you have to with the cost itself. And at the same time, the computing power which you're utilizing for identifying the visibility in the data. So those kind of challenges may come in, but I would rather put it in the way that data is actually our friend than the challenge in the cloud environment.
Yeah, understood. Now we talked a little bit about event streaming. This is for you, Nitish. Like, how important is event streaming for your business? Like, think of real-time delivery tracking, and so on, personalized recommendations. Like, is something you're using a lot at Gojek?
Oh yeah, it's kind of part and parcel of today's world, right? And especially as data proliferates across business sites, event streaming is becoming ever more important, right? And the strategy kind of aligns with the new world order of instant gratification, right? You gave some very good examples, right? Adds to the personalization of the product, right? One of the key tenets of event streaming is real-time insights and the ability to react to these insights. These provide an opportunity to create better and more engaging experiences for the customer, right? But while event streaming works well for chains of business operations that depend on one another, it isn't enough for many end-to-end use cases, right? Particularly ones where the users are involved, right? Buttons still need to be clicked, for example, right? So now we do have event streaming databases that help combine event streaming computations with tables that users can query. But I would say any mature or complex product would need to deal with both active databases as well as event streaming.
Yeah. Okay. And last questions, Rajesh. This is for you. How do you feel about do your own or managed services? Is managed services something you're considering or using at the moment? What's your take in it?
Well, this is actually, we spoke about time to market scenario, which I spoke about earlier, that actually falls in place with this kind of thought process. So when we go for managed services, actually, we need to worry about what functionally needs to be developed and delivered in the market. Rest of the things are taken care automatically. You don't need to worry about installation. You don't need to worry about how the deployments are going to work out, how the scalability is going to work out, and how the alerting mechanisms are going to work out. We just need to integrate. So functional development and then integration. That's what the benefit we get. So essentially, it helps us go faster on time to market. That's one benefit. Apart from this, if we really look at the skill set, so see, when we talk about managed services, mostly we are talking about infrastructure level services. So managed services give you the best benefit because infrastructure, skill set which is required for the organization, that may not be very critical at that point in time. If you have few people in that area, you are done with that, and remaining can be managed by the cloud provider or the partners with the cloud. So managed services play a critical role in various business aspects and delivering the functionality to the production. And it really with the kind of development has happened in cloud scenarios, it has actually made it as simple as possible from the managed services perspective, that what all can be done without putting too much of effort. And if we talk about level of the managed services, it has even gone to the level like we speak about serverless computing. Now, serverless computing, probably you can put it a little bit outside of managed services, but still it's a managed service that somebody is managing your servers, and those are shared servers, and you can actually run your software without having dedicated machines for it. So that's like super beneficial, I believe, when the companies are not big enough. When the companies grow big enough, you might want to decide whether DIY makes more sense or managed services makes more sense. If you really ask me, managed services, even at this stage, managed services are the beneficial thing than going for DIY yourself.
Well, Nitish, what do you think?
Yeah, quick 2 cents, right? Right now, you would see a common theme across organizations to do more with less, right? And that's literally what Rajesh was highlighting here, right? This is where managed services come in, right? Organizations evaluate the cost of DIY versus managed services, and at first glance, it can be pretty eye-opening to review a proposal to pay a fixed annual cost for 3, 5, or even more years, right? Especially when you may not have all the data available upfront, right? But at any point of time, what I recommend is doing a total cost of ownership evaluation rather than just an investment evaluation. And a lot of this adds up, right? As Rajesh was rightly pointing out. So yes, there is a financial cost, but there are also aspects like staff costs, operational costs, invisible opportunity costs as well, right? Which have to be brought into the mix for an organization to evaluate the actual investment in a DIY approach versus a managed services approach.
Okay, well, guys, unfortunately, our time is up. I just want to thank you both. This was a really great session. I learned a lot, and I hope the people who joined us as well. I'm going to say goodbye for now, and yeah, thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
Thank you, Andrea. Take care, everyone.
Bye, guys.